Welcome to the Let Pedal Podcast with your host, Bruce Outridge. Bruce is so worried about being late, he's been known to leave the night before for a morning meeting. You can catch him in his car.
Welcome to the Let Pedal Podcast. I'm your host, Bruce Outridge, and this is episode number 189. And today we are going to take a look at women in the trucking industry. So if you remember back in September, we had a Smart Trucker seminar series, which is a Smart Trucker is put on by Road Today, and we've been doing it this year with them as well. And taking basically a seminar series within the Ontario area here to different venues and having them just people come out to the seminar. It's free. There's sponsors, and they can have a meal and listen to topics of interest. And this one particular one in Grimsby, we had Shelley Uvanile-Hesch, who is with the Women's Trucking Federation of Canada, and she's also a driver. She's been driving for over 25 years, and she is now encouraging women and helping women get into the industry and have long-time careers. She runs team with her husband, and she was our guest speaker at this particular event. And so with Shelley's permission, I'm going to share that with you. So what we did, this is taken at the event, and what's going to happen is there was a panel discussion on beforehand, and I'm going to put that as a video in the extra features this week. So if you want to see the panel interview with the women, then take a look at our website, theledpedalpodcast.com, and you can see the video of the panel discussion. But this one part here was Shelley's talk to, she talked about women in the industry and how they can be better into the industry and how they can succeed in the industry and what they should look for, what they should worry about, what they shouldn't worry about. And so it's a great talk. And so Shelley gave me the permission to play it, and I thought I'm going to put it on the podcast here for you. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we will be right into the presentation with Shelley, and stay tuned. Hey friends, did you know that 50% of all businesses fail, and it's even higher in the trucking industry, unless you have the proper people helping you? RS 2000 Tax Consultants, they help owner-operators with their tax information, their bookkeeping, setting up their businesses properly so that you can be successful. They specialize in trucking. You certainly want to make sure that you are with RS 2000 Tax Consultants. They operate all the way through Ontario. People come right to you. You don't have to go to them. And they make sure that the whole family's involved and you are set up properly. How do you reach them? Well, you can go to their website at rs2000tax.com, or you can reach them by phone at 1-800-304-3986. Folks, I've been working with RS 2000 Tax Consultants for a number of years. They've been on the podcast, and I know that they can help you be successful in your business. Get started today, visit their website, or call them at 1-800-304-3986. If you don't know by now, Shelley is the president. Is it CEO or president, or does it matter? CEO? It's just a few letters and a couple initials. So Shelley's the CEO of Women's Trucking Federation of Canada, and she took that over 2 years ago. And so just so you know what the Women's Trucking Federation of Canada does, they established to encourage and promote the women of the trucking industry. Commercial truck drivers should be portrayed as qualified professionals and perceived that way by the general public. And Women's Trucking Federation of Canada does that by trying to shift attitudes in that direction by promoting training standards, safety, and encouraging unity. Shelley has been a really, I'm going to say, a big force in the industry as far as getting women involved and keeping, and you're connected with Joanne, who's with Trucking for a Cure, Joanne Millen-McKenzie. And you guys, I think, are the leaders from what I'm seeing in the industry as far as bringing awareness to women in the industry, showing them that there's a lot of opportunities as far as driving and other positions. And you do it through two ways. One, through talking about it, things like this, but the other one is you're still doing it. Both you and Joanne both drive. You're both out there on a regular basis. And there's many other women in the industry as well that are doing so. So you guys have done a great job. You currently run with your husband, right? Team driving. He's single driving this week, but you're team driving. And you've been around for 27 years driving. So I'd like to welcome Shelley Uvanile-Hesch to the stage. Please don't trip over our cords.
Thanks, Bruce. Wow, what's there left to say? You just said it all.
No.
A whole life story. I grew up the daughter of a truck driver. So that's where I first got my love and interest for driving a truck. But, I got married, had kids, those things. So truck driving just wasn't a very good idea at the time. So I started driving a school bus. Then I advanced to coaches. Then I went to a six-wheeler. And then I followed my dreams to a big truck. And I haven't looked back. My husband got to the point he'd say to me, tired of being, you're gone all the time. You moved into that big truck, you're gone all the time. I said, get your license or suffer. So he did. He quit his job at 27 years, went and got his Class A license, and we've been together in the truck ever since. The first male trainee that I had, that was a really good student, and the last one, so I thought I'd keep him. He's well trained. He does windows, he fuels. I can't complain. So that's basically the little short blurb that I give on my career. Like I said, we have children and we have grandchildren. I have personally, I've experienced everything that you can experience as a driver on the road. In 2005, we got the phone call when we were in Black River Falls, Wisconsin, that our oldest son had hung himself in a tree. He had committed suicide. We were 13 hours away from home. That was the hardest phone call we'd ever experienced in our life, and it was the longest it ever took us to get home. Our company was very great. They flew us home. And so we've experienced the tragic loss that no truck driver ever wants to hear about when we're out on the road. But I'm still here, and I'm still trucking, and life moves on. And I don't tell that story so that people feel sorry for me. I tell that to you to show you that we all have strength within us that we don't know is there. And sometimes you just have to dig a little deeper to pull that strength out and keep on going. Not everybody can, but we can do it. When you have friends and family, it works. When you have a supportive carrier, which I'm still working for this very same carrier that helped see me through that. And I'm still here. And they're a very supportive company. All carriers could learn from them. Not every carrier is like that. So let's change it around to something more happy, but you wanted to know something about me, and you just got a piece of me that I don't normally share with everybody. There's a lot of what I do here, and I'm out in the public eye a lot, and sometimes your personal life just stays where it is, personal and in the back corner. But I really believe that women can do this job. I firmly believe it. And I have a passion and a love for this industry that not too many people have. I encourage women of any race, color, creed. I don't care. You can do it. I tell girls that. I go into the high schools and speak. I have a mentors group on Facebook, and I have guided some ladies that thought they were never, ever going to drive. And they're driving, and they're still driving, and they love it. It's little bits of life. These couple ladies over here, Jennifer and Suzanne, they're in my mentors group. They're mentors, and they actually see some of the ladies and their struggles, and some of the men, because we have men in there as well. And we try to help everybody. We have dispatchers that run into issues, that have questions. It's not just drivers that have issues. It's not just women that have issues. But there are some issues that are a little bit more predominant for the women than there are for men, and we still face those struggles. Teaching safety seems to be very important, especially when we come from Canada. We're pretty laid back up here. We don't have as much of, unless you live in the GTA, guns and knife violence that we do down in the States. And we need to teach both drivers of either sex how to protect themselves down in the States. It's more common sense down there. Down there right now, in some places when you're in the lower parts of Texas, don't you dare get out of your truck after you fueled and run in and forget to not lock the door, because when you come out, your truck's going to be gone. Here in Canada, we don't think about it. We'll go to bed. We've got the windows down. Go crawl in the bunk. We're getting fresh air. Temperature's right. We think nothing of it. But you can't do that down there. So it's little bits of knowledge for somebody, especially when they've never been out of Canada going into the U.S., that we really need to stress. And I think it'll make a lot of changes. We're going around, we're trying to get more women. We want you to tell your story. Your story is what inspires others. That's how we get more women into the industry. And you know, I was at my own board meeting when one of my advisors mentioned that, you know, we really need to start fixing the trucking industry within itself in order to attract new people in. But how do we do that? When we still have a carrier against the driver mentality. And it's still pretty dominant for those that are still in those areas of the industry. We know that. But how do we change that? How do we get drivers to see that the carrier is not always the enemy? And the carrier to understand that sometimes the driver has a little bit of knowledge. It seems to be a hard barrier to break, but we are trying. We come to a lot of events. We speak at a lot of engagements. We try to bring awareness. But it's not always easy. If you believe in some of those principles and values, then it's everyone's responsibility to speak up, regardless of what part of the industry you belong in. We need to bridge the gaps. Until we bridge the gaps, we can't commence change. So how do you bring in a new driver into this industry when you hear the existing drivers complain? You don't. If you treat your drivers good, they'll bring you drivers. You know, carriers are often say that their drivers don't have time to do anything on their own personal time because they want to spend time with their families. I talked to a lot of drivers since we started going into a few schools, and we're trying to work out a program so that every driver that goes into the school will have the same program. They'll have the same videos, promotions to put up. How many drivers are willing to volunteer their time? They don't care. What's a couple hours, they'll tell me. I'd love to do that on a Friday. You know, but I don't know. Will my company let me take a truck in? In most cases, it's the company that won't allow them to take the truck in and not the driver that doesn't want to do it. If you're a company and you can afford to go to a golf tournament and you take 5, 10 of your employees, what's a couple hours for fuel for your driver to go to a school and help promote the trucking industry? Because there's nobody better at doing that job than your drivers. People in schools, they don't want to see somebody up there in a suit. They want to talk to a driver. They want to know it the way the driver sees it. You know, I've often gone in and I have a slideshow of videos and pictures, and the kids love the scenery. Because I tell them, like, I'm a rolling vacation. The things that I see. When I need downtime or I want a couple extra hours somewhere, I'll just tell my dispatcher, hey, is it okay? Can I grab a couple hours here? Can we grab a day here? I've parked my truck. I've gone in a cab. I've gotten a rental car. I've gone all over. I've taken my nieces and nephews with me in the truck. I took my nephew 3 days. We spent it in Malibu. Like he said, Baywatch. That's all he could think about was Baywatch. That's all he kept saying. Too bad he didn't get to see Pamela. But, you know, so there's things you can do. And then we have the Trucker Buddy program, which I was involved with for many, many years, which pairs up drivers with a school somewhere across Canada or the U.S., and the students write to you. And I have binder after binder full of letters from my students. I actually have, in our company boardroom, there is a quilt that's all made out of paper on the wall that the students sent, because I took a truck and a trailer into the school, which I was in Baltimore, Maryland. That's where my school was. Can you say? It was interesting getting a truck and trailer in there. We had to have a police escort, but the police were more than happy to do it. and blocked us all in, and we spent a whole morning. We bought our students pizza for lunch. We brought them all little goodies, and we spent the day. And we read stories to them on trucks and answered all their questions, and no, we don't live in igloos. That was it, and they were surprised. They were like, your truck's got a microwave. There's a bed in here, so that's where you sleep, right? So there's lots of things they don't know. I just recently, I did a job fair early on in the spring this year. I had 1,100 students go through my truck, grade 8 and grade 10 students. They were just like, wow. And the girls were like, hey, I can see out the windows. I can see over the hood. Hey, I can do this. I can do this. You know, there was quite a few of them that come up to me afterwards, and some teachers that said, that thanked me for actually letting these girls get into my truck. Because up until then, they'd never even thought about the trucking industry. Why would they? Those are big, scary machines. So one said to me, I gotta watch out for you guys on the highway. You're a bullet. Stop listening to the media, right? When they actually got in and they could see what we could see in the truck, they were amazed. I've often done the blind spots with cones, or a teacher's car when they're willing. You would believe how kids will, and even teachers have said, they didn't realize that. Never knew. So to say that, you know, I talked to a few and they go, oh, we've been there, we've done that. Well, you know what? We're into the 2000s. It's time to been there, do that again. We need to get back into the schools. And you know what? You don't have to be a truck driver to go into the school. We get some programs going. Are you in dispatch? Do you love what you do? Do you think other women can do what you do? Then you need to get into the schools. That's where we need to spread our message. It's time for the trucking industry to come out of their box. We always think within the box. Our events are always for within the trucking industry. We only ever invite others from the trucking industry. Bruce, are you going to go back driving?
No, I've got too many other things going on.
Right. So really, what I just had to say, does it really interest you? You're like, woo, right? Let's put it where it's at. So we need to think outside of that box. We have to change that. We have to start going to the public, the general public. We also have to start changing our image to the general public. We have, we have a lot of distractive drivers, both in four wheels and in trucks. We have to change that. Companies need to start enforcing social media policies. We need to start policing within our own. We need to change the image of our industry. And change begins with us. I don't know, I often get criticized for that comment, but I firmly believe it. Change begins with us. Anybody got any questions? Then I can stop talking for a while.
No, you just got started.
How do you convince the ditch masters that we all live for a living? And that, well, actually, probably the nicest thing about this whole system now is e-logs. But it got to the point where the ditch masters can't even do things you used to do. I don't want to call them ditch masters. Dispatchers, that's
Change starts with you. Don't call them that.
But some of the companies still haven't embraced the idea that they're stuck with it. They're just.
That's because they all believe WIDA is going to pull them out at the end, and it's not going to happen. But reality is, in 2019, even Canada's going to have them. There's a lot of hiccups with e-logs. And basically, the problem is not so much with e-logs. We have problems with our hours of service regulations. They need to change. And they needed to change even before e-logs came in. But they are the issue, not the e-logs. Part of the problem with the e-logs is the technology side of it, and the fact that companies can self-certify. And for smaller fleets, this is causing an issue. One of my corporate members is a small fleet carrier who is now about his enter round 3 of an e-log system, right? So, and that's because the first one, it wasn't working, there was hiccups, and when they called back, well, that place wasn't in business anymore, right? So those are issues, and those needs to be addressed more on a corporate level. Drivers can't really do a lot on that other than comply, you know, and make sure that your company is teaching you with a good training program. They are mandated by law to train you on those e-logs.
The bigger issue has been with dispatchers. In the past, e-logs have alleviated some of the dispatchers pushing drivers to break hours of service, to always be pushing, and just do that, just go there. Well, it doesn't matter, ignore that, just, pretend it doesn't happen, just violate your hours of service, it's okay. From their office, yeah, it's fine for you, you're not the one on the road. And that's been a bigger issue is with smaller carriers or with companies that you can go to the safety or compliance department and they don't care because it's more important to deliver freight.
That's always been the biggest problem that we have within our industry. And I think, the part of the reason that we're to e-logs today is our own fault. Because carriers always did whatever companies required of them because they were the customer. Drivers did what the carrier wanted because they wanted a paycheck, right? So now we've evolved to this area where that's not going to happen anymore. So our dispatchers need training and our drivers need training, but most importantly, our customers need training. And it's going to be a tough adjustment. Drivers, unfortunately, are probably going to take more of the personal blunt of that transition because we're the only ones that our customers see, right? They never see your dispatcher. They're usually a name at the bottom of an email, and maybe if they're lucky, they've talked to them on the phone, right? So, we have to toughen up. We have to train up and go about what we have to do to transition to e-logs. They're not going to go away. And any driver or carrier thinks that they are, they're not. It's pretty much set in stone. I've never allowed a dispatcher who browbeat me or push me to go anywhere. If my logbook says I can't go, my truck don't move. And as a very good friend of mine who is now retired but had been way up in MTO, is that dispatcher sitting in the seat beside you with a gun to your head? Because if he is, then by all means tell me that's why your logbook's the way it is. But if he's not, nobody forced you. And there are avenues that drivers can go in Canada when those kind of issues are happening.
I always said,
Know your rights.
I have the keys. That was always, well, go do this. No, I have the keys. I'm good.
There's quite a few laws now in place to help coercion of drivers, especially in the United States. Remember that your dispatcher doesn't run the office, so there's somebody else breathing down their neck. And those are the people that you really need to focus on, and your safety department. Your dispatcher doesn't make decisions. Your dispatcher does what they're told to do and uses the systems that are told to use. They don't make decisions. They get stuff thrown at them, and they have customers calling and screaming at them saying, where is this load? So they're calling and following up and doing what they're supposed to do, but it's pushed down. So I get a lot of drivers have this us against dispatch kind of mentality that you were talking about earlier, and that's absolutely true. But it's wrongfully placed. Don't get me wrong, there's for sure dispatchers that are great out there, for sure. But again, it's your license, protect it.
Out of curiosity, you said there are laws, there are avenues. Those avenues, I think drivers need to be made more aware of, whether it's in a trucking magazine, to actually have articles on when you have dispatchers, because everyone knows it's not just from the dispatchers. I always complain, part of the problem within the industry is when you work for a larger company, part of the problem is the dum-dums who are in sales selling the routes. They aren't truck drivers. They should actually have to drive that route so you can actually appreciate what a driver has to do to get to this customer.
You want to tell me, do you remember Yankee?
Yankee?
Do you remember Yankee? Okay. Yankee was the only company that I'm aware of who what they did was, if you worked in dispatch, you went out on the road for 2 weeks in a truck. No dispatcher in that office knew where you were, what truck you were in, and you experienced exactly what those drivers felt. So when there was no time to pee, you didn't go. And then they take the driver and put them in the office so that you could see what they dealt with in a day. And I think, I know it's not realistic for a lot of companies because of the size, but if you could even just do a week of switching your drivers and your dispatchers around, I think that they would come to a better understanding of each other. And I was at one company where I called in, and it was a very nasty situation. And I just told the dispatcher, I said, do you know where to move the call to? And he's like, well, I said, I know you're not the guy that's actually saying that on the other end of that satellite. I know where it's coming from, and that's where I want you to put me through to, because I'm not dealing with you anymore. Because in reality, I wasn't dealing with you to begin with. I've had a company, because of my sex, tell me that there's nothing wrong with your truck's fine. Oh, really? Are you sure about that? Because I'm pretty sure that brake chamber is about to fall apart. No, she's good. It's good, shall I tell you? It's good. I took that truck down to Putnam. I pulled around the back of the scale house. I walked in. I said to him, excuse me, sir, I got a problem. And he goes, what's your problem, driver? I said, there's something wrong with my brakes. My company says there isn't. He says, well, I'll inspect it, driver, but I said, inspect it by all means. They did their inspection. My truck got pulled out of service. He looked at me, he goes, how the hell did you get here? I said, I drove that. He says, I know you drove that, you crossed the scale plate, but there was nothing. He says, how did you get here? I go, well, it's all in your head, driver. It's all in your head. So MTO inspectors are used to hearing that, So we have to remember that, they're not the enemy. It's the same as when you call the government, you've got some issues ongoing. The coercion rule only applies in the US. In Canada, there's so many different rules and regulations, depending on what province you're in. Whether you're provincial or an interprovincial carrier, it makes difference. But there are organizations in Canada. We have OBAC that drivers can call and get that kind of information. I do have a lot of resources on my own website for the various scale houses, MTO, Saskatchewan, Alberta. We're Canada-wide. So I'm trying to provide as much accurate and up-to-date resources as I can for all areas, including funding programs, women initiatives. So we're slowly building that list. But like I said, the Kitchener-Waterloo area alone probably has about 35 different employment agencies that are government-run that each have access to all different kinds of funding pots. And just recently I learned, and I don't know if any of you are aware of this, but the March of Dimes. What do you think about when you think of the March of Dimes? Yeah, donation, right? They call you up on the other end of the phone. What do you think? Right? They have an employment center now. So when they're calling you, especially carriers, training schools and stuff, they're not always calling you because they're looking for money. They're calling you because they want to know what you're looking for in training.
We also deal with veterans
Yeah. And, I've talked to a few of those gentlemen, and they're like, do you know how many people hang up the phone before I even get to tell them? I'm not looking for a donation. I want to know, are you hiring? What particular training are you looking for? Is there a way that I can help you? He said, because when we email them, our emails go to spam. When we call them, they're hanging up on us. How do we get the word out? How about Goodwill? Everybody familiar with Goodwill, right? You figure that's a place to. They have their own training programs as well. And they are also reaching out to people because they have funding. They have a lot of funding money available. So don't be so quick to toss out the emails from those names that we think to ourselves, they want money, delete. Don't be so quick to hang up on them on the phone. If they're calling you at your place of business, they are calling you because they have some useful information for you. So we need to open up a little bit more so that we get some of those training dollars that are available and we are able to get more people through school. So you're going to start to find them. We're starting to add more and more of those to our website. as we're coming across them. There's supposed to be could be a new program coming in place. Should have more details in about 3 or 4 weeks. Then hopefully we can make an announcement on that. Any questions?
I'm actually doing my test tomorrow.
Oh, good luck. Yay!
I just wanted to know what kind of advice you have for somebody starting up.
Obviously. I could tell you basically what I tell every driver when they're getting out. Don't accept a job at the first company that offers you a job. I want you to take the time to research your company. Take a list of questions. You'll find them on our website. I offer a list of 50 different questions. Okay? Some people think it's excessive, but they're important because you need to interview the company the same as they need to interview you. Okay? Because
Talk to other drivers. Because most truckers have worked for more than one company. A lot of them like to move around a bit because they think they're getting a better deal hopping from place to place to place. May or may not be true. I worked for the T. Eaton Company Limited for 25 years. Long time. If they're still in business, great place to work. I wore a suit and tie every day to drive. That's the good old days. Sears was the same way, right? Had a nice blue uniform with a suit and tie.
yep.
Ask. Just if you see the truck sitting somewhere, and, oh, how's this place? Our students are asking us all the time, and most of the answer is just, oh, I never worked there. Find out somebody that did work there, see why they left, if they're just goofy, because.
And might I add to your thing is don't ask that question on Facebook.
No.
Okay? If you want to know about a trucking company, and I've had students that have actually done this, they've gone to that company and sat outside and waited for the trucks to come in and out of the yard. Ask their drivers, how long have you been working there? What do you think about the company?
I tell all my students, doesn't matter which company you go work for, they're gonna put you out. Sit back, think about it before you walk away from it, because you can get a lot worse than where you are right now. So, it's just, check it out, look around. Don't, like you said, don't take the first job that he's offered to you. Have a look.
There's no shame in saying to that company, I appreciate your offer, but I'm going to need a couple days to think about it and go home and think about it.
Having been in employment options for many years before I did this, that's what we say too, is just interview them, ask questions, get your face out there before your resume gets there. Set up that, when I have 10 minutes of your time to see what you're looking for in an employee, now can you tell me what the industry looks like, where are we going, how are we, so the networking part is just as important, because once they see your face, it puts a name to a face in your resume. So it's really important, and in this industry, networking is quite important.
Yeah, networking is important, and I was just say, you need to. Part of the reason I have faith in interviewing the company is because I want to make sure the company's a fit for me. Okay, if you need to be home every other weekend because you're a split-up family and you have to be home for your kids every other weekend, you make sure that carrier knows that right up front, because not all of them can accommodate it. Some will try as much as they can, but it's not always going to happen. So if you're supposed to be home every other Friday and one weekend they don't get you home to Saturday, can you cope with that? Do you have the mechanisms to cope with that? Most people do not, right? Then you're under stress. The more stress you're under, the more likelihood is you're going to have an accident, right? So you really need to research the company. I've been 13 years where I am right now, and that's because I interviewed the company.
When you get some experience, then you are the one with all the last place I worked before I started teaching, I worked 4 days a week on my schedule. And everybody goes, how'd you get that? So I walked in there with a lot of experience, accident-free, ticket-free, no safety violations. So I went to them and I said, look, this is how I'm gonna work, right? Okay. And they,
I've got a friend of mine that works 2 days a week and he takes all winter off. And the company he's with is happy with that, right? They go down south for the winter, so.
they had Challenger, they had guys that were taking January, February, March off every year going to Mexico.
There's a lot.
Yeah, but you people are now talking about, not talking about owner operators, you're talking about employees.
Yes, employees.
The Challenger actually even has some owner
They,
operators.
yeah, they're flipping over a little bit right now.
That,
Most
no,
companies
but they
have.
have some owner operators that
Did-
just,
did
they've been
work.
in it long enough that they no longer, they were good with their finances, and they would park the truck for a couple months in the winter because they hated driving in the snow.
I can tell you, we have probably 5 owner operators at our company that are off from December to April every year. Owner operators that go to Mexico every year.
If you have a paid off truck, that's great. If you don't, then you're working. And
Well,
that's just how it works,
there
right?
is an opportunity, we do have, some diversity where we are, and, some of the people need to go back home for a period of time, right? And we were talking, sometimes up to 3 months, and if they're owner operators, because of the issue for them, so we have, what's called driver corps, they can drive for the driver and keep the truck going, so there is that opportunity, but they are responsible for paying them, they're responsible for more than seeking them out. We still have to put them through our regular, onboarding systems and, yeah.
Well, I think it boils down to, it's a business, an owner operator is a business, and you decide what you can afford and you can't afford. And 3 of those owner operators are still making payments on their trucks, but they still go away. Because that's called common sense in financing, right? And people that have RSPs or came from other areas, other fields. One of our teams is a husband and wife team. They're usually out 7 to 8 weeks at a time. But if they get into Texas, they'll take 2 weeks off because they love to golf. And they miss it in the winter months when they live out in BC. So it's different for everybody, and you have to know what you can and you can't do and what you can and can't afford. But you have to find the right fit for you. Owner operators is a totally different ballgame. I mean, there's fuel surcharges, there's so many things involved with them. And they're usually a little bit more picky when they're looking to hop companies. Being a hothead at any company, doesn't matter whether you're a company or an owner operator, won't get you far. I think usually most companies, if you start as an owner operator and they've had to detail your truck and your satellite system and stuff, if you leave within a certain amount of time, you're paying a lot of money because it's just going to come right off your last pay. Right? So it's common sense. Everything is common sense. And right now, as I tell some of them, companies are more desperate for drivers than you are for a job. Okay? And there's lots of carriers now that are starting to implement driver training programs for newly licensed drivers. So do not take the first job that pops out. Because if you start off in a job that you don't like and with a company that makes you miserable, you're not going to finish. Right? So you need to shop around and find the right one. And people go, oh, it just cost me X amount of dollars to go to truck driving school. Sure it did. It cost everybody. But do you know how much money it costs a carrier to train you? Right? It's not a simple process. By the time they pay for all the criminal checks, the P tests, the drug tests, everything that they do, they've invested money in you as well. And then they're starting a training program. Now, depending on the size of the carrier and the length of the training program, some of them have told me that when they bring in a newly licensed driver, it can cost them anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 for the first 8 weeks they have that newly licensed driver. Okay, so they are investing in you as much as you are invested in your school. So don't leave them in a month or 2 months, because then you're just going to cause that mess, because you got to go through it all again. And the more that you have on your record, the worse it is. As I tell everybody, I don't care how bad the carrier is, suck up the first year. Stay there a year, at least a year, and then move on. Give 2 weeks. Always give 2 weeks notice. Right? I actually know a driver who did that. Left the truck and the trailer in the dock, had enough. Hopped on a bus and went home. Total unprofessionalism at its best. Any questions?
Just a comment here for your drivers. Like, we deal a lot with these people, and just a little heads up of this young lady, she's getting into the trucking industry right now. You're gonna stay as a driver. You're gonna have a lot of companies out there right now trying to force you to form a corporation, and they want you to be a driver service corp. Keep away from that stuff.
Very
Because I'll tell you something right now, when you get into that corporation, you just can't dissolve it automatically. And it takes time, it takes money. Secondly, the only reason the corporation is there is for the company to save money by not paying you any EI, CPP, paying all the benefits. This is a corporation, right? You understand this? You have to get a corporation, you have to get an HST number, you have to file a corporate return, you have to do your personals. And out of that, you have no benefits, okay? The only thing is maybe you can make something up in the meals. But what happens is, if they pay you, and then you have to collect HST, because you're providing a service from one corporation to another, okay? And that creates a problem. People, if they give you $1,000 check for that weekend, if they don't pay you $1,130, you have to take 13% out of that 1,000 and submit it to the government. Because you have no expenses except for on your meals and a few other incidentals that you have. So I'm just forewarning any people that goes in as a driver, do not form a corp. There's no benefit, go somewhere else.
There's some of the other companies now are starting to charge, paying 40 cents a mile, giving you 32, keeping 8, so that you know if you have an accident, it comes out of your pocket. That's not right.
That's not right either. So,
They're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to make deductions.
Yeah, they're doing it.
right. So please be very careful, people. We've seen a lot of people get into a lot of trouble. We advise them not to do it. And if they force you to do it, walk away. You're just, it's not worth it, guys. When you just take a job, listen to these people. Research your companies. There's no question about that. You have to do that and stick with it for a year or two. We've talked about this as.
Well, you and I have to have a podcast episode about this.
Yeah.
Well, I'm afraid we'll get into it, because we're the same opinion, but it's been a real problem in the industry, and I've talked about it time and time again, and I've had people call me that have gotten into this, and they're trying to get out of it, and it's a gray area. I remember I was a supervisor and had to do that evaluation. If you're not bringing a certain amount of equipment in order to do the job, which if you're a proper owner operator, you bring the truck, right? So you're fine. And this is a lot of companies do it. And what happens, I find the owners that have the drivers who are doing this, they say, well, we've been audited. Well, because the guy who owns the company is fine, because he's just paying off these people. Until they go audit those people is when they'll find out the game is being played. Most of the time they don't do that.
Right, and what's coming, you'll find out in Revenue Canada, they're gonna catch on pretty quickly. See, these people are actually employees.
Yes.
They don't have a vested interest in the company, they have nothing, all they're bringing is their job, their time, and their effort. And they're just getting away from paying off. So at the end of the day, you work for 5 years, and you go for unemployment insurance, you can't draw. Because you're self-employed. You can't draw anything.
And see, part of the problem is that most of these drivers, when they get stung, they walk away.
You can't pay EI if you don't do that. But your CPP will cost you $5,000 a year. Think about that, because you're paying both ends.
So you still have to pay EI, you can't.
No, you don't.
I always paid it for
No,
years.
well, you got sucked in. You're wrong. Okay?
Pay is pay.
You don't have, when you're self-employed, you do not pay EI.
This is an issue. though.
Workers' comp doesn't pay.
It's a big issue.
Yeah, it's a totally different story.
We kind of digress, but I'm just giving you guys a heads up, those that are driving, so be very careful on that. Okay?
Okay, are there any more questions for Shelley?
Shelley, how do you balance being a truck driver and
Yeah.
that is,
Can I have one?
it's a big barrier, and I say for women, and that is just simply because, childcare still falls quite a bit on women. I'm not saying that men don't step up or anything like that, but, there's definitely.
I can answer that real easy. It was called, "Hey, Mom."
So you have grandma, so you have family support as well.
I had family support. I wouldn't have been able to do it without family support. My kids were teenagers when I decided to. But my husband was also home at first. My boys respected him. So, we had our issues, and we had the drunks. And I can still remember the first night I came home, and the only thing I could smell in my house was the weed. Because I come through the door and I go, "Surprise, Mom's home." And they're like, "Mom." And I'm like, "What's that smell?" And they're like, "We burnt brownies." And I'm like, "You burnt brownies? Really?" Said, "You got any of those weed babies left lying around? Because Mommy's going to flush them down the toilet." "Where's that baggie?" Yeah, we had a little bit of trials. Oh, and then we had to put the lock on the liquor cabinet because that was next. Because they would drink the rye, and then they would make tea and refill the bottle and think that we were...
never thought of that. I kept leaving the bottle empty.
Yeah.
I should have thought of it.
Yeah. Do you ever have, you've got a whole bunch of people coming over after work, friends that are normally out west, you bring them home after work, and you serve them a drink, and you go to do some shots, and everybody's like, it was, what is that, right? The kids, then they were gone. They were gone like a shot. They couldn't get out the back door fast enough because they just got busted. Big time. But on a whole, my kids were good. So they were older, so it made it a little bit easier. One of our, on my board, she leaves early Monday morning. She's home late Tuesday afternoon. Leaves Wednesday morning. She's home Thursday afternoon. So she only has to, her mom watches a little bit in between. So she's home with her family. I'm finding more and more carriers now are starting to be more respectful of home time, regardless of what sex you are, especially for single parents, because they need drivers. I think there's a lot more that most of these carriers could be doing, and they just don't.
What suggestion would you make on
I think they could do more relays. A lot more relays could be done to shorten the downtime from being long haul. Getting a lot of the ladies to go into the States or guys, it's starting to be a real turnoff. And I think what we need to explain to them is the fact of interstating, cabotage rules, so they understand why we can't do relays on U.S. soil. Maybe we need to start making some centers that are at the borders where drivers can just come up, drop, go. Even if, carriers, I know money's tight. Money's tight for every carrier, all right? It's not rocket science. We all know that. But for God's sake, start working together. Rent a piece of land and share it up there. Make everything easier for yourselves and for everybody else.
Most of the East Coast places, you can just barely make it out on your hours of service. You can't go to Toronto and deliver. You can't pick up bananas in Wilmington and run all the way to Toronto and deliver. Zachary does it. It's tough.
We have local drivers now.
Yeah, that's the way, only way, and
Yeah.
Zabbits in the falls did, they drop all their bananas in the yard, local drivers.
Yeah, so those are a few things that we need to look at that we can really easily do. We have loads going through the north. Why can't they drop off in Winnipeg? And you got a driver in Winnipeg that takes them to Calgary.
I used to run
Right.
to White River.
Yeah, but there's all different scenarios that we can try to use to shorten up loads within our own companies. Relay a lot more in Canada. We can't in the US, but we can make points a lot closer at the borders. And I think that will help relieve some congestion. If you don't have the space to do that, have city guys down there. You got a truck coming up and you need them to turn and burn back down, or a driver I can meet you there, right? A lot of drivers and, carriers don't like to hear this, but we all know interstate's still happening. It happens down in the US, happens up here in Canada. I personally know a team from the US that lives in Montana that comes up to Calgary, and they deliver in Calgary and they reload in Calgary and they go out to Newfoundland. Then they come down here to Ontario and then they go home. That's their triangle. They've been doing that for 9.5 years. So anybody that doesn't think that stuff doesn't happen is, no, very sadly mistaken. There's still a lot of that. But the younger drivers and millennials want to be home more. They don't want to be out a week, let alone 2 weeks, right? So we need to work differently. I think we need to work with U.S. carriers a little bit more, and I think that we can make it happen where the switch points are shorter distances and make it work. But everybody's got to be on the same page, right? Because we have millennials, and it's not just for kids. People want to be home anymore. We have an aging population. As a friend of mine said, his dad's 75 years old. He called him up on the ladder trying to clean out the gutters the other day. He said to his dad, "Dad, what the heck are you doing? I told you I was coming today to do that." He goes, "Well, son, you told me that last weekend and you didn't show up." And he goes, "Well, Dad, I got stuck out on the road." He goes, "Dad, you could afford to pay somebody to do this." "No, that's why I got you, boy." Right? So, and I think all of us, or most of us, have that experience. We have those parents that know they shouldn't be up there on that ladder, but they're going to do it anyways. I often refer to my mother as Hercules because she just thinks she can do anything now at her age. And yeah, it was a real treat. I spent Labor Day with her all day long in the hospital. That's how much of a Hercules she is, okay? It gives you any hint. Woohoo, happy Labor Day. First one I've been home for, and I don't know how long. And that's where I spent it, in the ER. Yeah, but she wouldn't share. That was the problem. She wouldn't share.
And you could share because they have to do a pee test.
Oh, yes. The dreaded pee test. I don't worry about those. All right. All right. Thanks for having me here, Bruce and Manette. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shelley. Big hand for Shelley. Thank you so much. So that was a great presentation by Shelley. She's got a lot of knowledge. If you would like to check out the Women's Trucking Federation of Canada, go to their website, which is womenstruckingfederationofcanada.net, or you can go to WTFC.ca, and I'll put that in the show notes. And so while we're on there, our next Smart Trucker seminar is coming up. Actually, when this is being released, it's today. So November 7th is our next one. It's going to be in the Mississauga area at our friends at Fleet Tax Services. They're going to be hosting it at their location, and it's going to be about becoming an owner-operator. So if you're not in the area, you won't be able to go. But if you want to be in the area, if you are in the area, then please join us. You've probably already, depending on when you've heard this, you may have already missed it because this episode's coming out the day that it is going to be coming out live. The other thing I want to mention is this weekend is Remembrance Day. A big thank you and for all the veterans across all of North America, never mind just Canada or the U.S., but wherever, we're a global world now, and, to realize that we would not even be here if it wasn't for our veterans. So please make sure you get out and respect them in whichever way you can. That could be anything from buying a poppy, which helps raise funds for them, to going to a ceremony and respecting them. Please take a moment at 11 o'clock to remember them. So our hearts go out to the veterans. You'll notice a lot of different changes going on in the industry, or not in the industry, in our podcast. The Lead Pedal podcast was... I guess it was planned on being a brand, but not a brand the way it's coming into its own brand. So we actually have branded everything there for the trucking industry. So if you have seen my website before, if you were to go to bruceoutridge.com, you would see all kinds of, I had trucking stuff on there, and I have my marketing stuff that I talk about. I have my art stuff that I talk about. And a lot of people, have been confused over the years because I do so many things, but I'm an entrepreneur and I enjoy doing so many things. And I have the talent and capabilities to do it, so I will. Done. Anyway, we've decided to make it a little clearer for everybody because people knew I had the podcast. The podcast's been out for a couple of years, but now we've got some great sponsors on board, and we just want to make it more of value to everybody. And so what we've done now is you'll see there's a lot more content. So we're putting up stuff more than just the podcast. We're only releasing one show a week as far as a podcast show, but we're having featured behind-the-scenes look at our musical guests, like the Danny Thompson Band that's on here. You're also going to see videos that are put on by other, such as the women's panel that we had. Instead of featuring that as a separate podcast episode, I thought we'll just put it on as a video episode. So that is also going to be on. You'll see we have a featured truck of the week now. Yes, I know. I am still a chrome junkie, my friends. Still a chrome junkie. So I just love the big trucks. And, in October, we featured a lot of them from the Trucking for a Cure convoy because it was breast cancer month. So I tried to, and you'll see the one here for November 11th is one that recognizes our veterans. But I'm just looking at cool trucks. And if you want to submit your cool truck to me, hey, I'm happy to have it featured. I know a lot of other people are doing that, so I'm not really trying to copy that. That's a marketing ploy. A lot of people do. Hey, send me your truck, and it's a way of getting. That's fine. If you want to send me your truck, I will feature it. But I'm looking for nice trucks, and I've got enough nice truck photos to last us probably about 10 years. So if you want to send one in, and you got a nice looking truck, and you're proud of it, be happy to feature it as a thank you for listening. But again, if you don't have, I'm not just looking for anybody's truck. I like nice ones. So I'm trying to capture a theme. I just like nice looking trucks. I've been taking pictures of them for years, and I thought I would start doing a feature of the week. So you'll also see we've ton of announcements here today. Holy smokes. You'll also hear that we've partnering with some of our podcast friends. So Chrome and Steel Radio, we're doing a lot more work with them. Trucker Radio, we've always been doing work with them. You'll start seeing their logos and stuff featured on. You may see stuff in either of our feeds, that kind of thing. So proud to be working with those guys. So lots of stuff going on. We've also got our musical guests. They're going to be featured every week as well. And of course, our sponsors are featured every week. So lots of stuff going on. Hope you are enjoying it. Please reach out if you think you've got a good topic, a story, you want to talk. You can reach out through email or through social media, and that'd be great to hear from you. And next week we are going to feature the Truck Convoy for Special Olympics. So they've been on before, but we're also, we didn't do it. We didn't put it on right away because of the way I'm taping. I'm taping about a month and a half ahead. So my shows were already out and scheduled when this event went on. But I went and I did some interview with some of the guys and gals at Trucking for a Cure. Or not Trucking for a Cure, sorry. Truck Convoy for Special Olympics. I'm involved in a couple different charities. Anyway, had a great time there. Did some emceeing for them. Did some interviews. Hoping to expand that relationship even more for next year. So make sure you join us next week and check that out. And we're going to take it out with my friends at Tropical Days and their fun song called Doobie Doo. I'll leave that to you to figure out what it is, but it's a fun song, and they're great, talented guys. So here's Tropical Days, and we'll catch you later.
Jobs and kids keep us busy like bees, and honey's feeling stuck in the house. Yeah, we love our life in the north, but we're dying to get down south. We took off, got a spot by the ocean. Baby's on a towel covered in suntan lotion. I'm playing guitar, but picking my brain, still fretting over things back home. She says, Dan, we ain't in a hurry, no need to worry about anyone else. Baby, just listen, I'm laid here glistening, there ain't nothing missing. I brought along a fat doobie-doo. There's plenty more back in the room. I know you like a fat doobie-doo. You know I like a fat doobie-doo too. We're all alone, just the sun, the sand, the sea, and coconut trees. Do that doobie, you can doobie-doo me. Our drinking friends like to get pickled, we just prefer to get fried. Now that's the truth, though it ain't quite legal, it's a fact out to own the hide. And Mama keeps my fire burning, she always could, so it might take a blue pill, but long as I'm breathing, Daddy's gonna bring home the wood. The lifestyle I'm describing, I can't be prescribing for anyone else. But we've come to treasure a reasonable measure of life's simple pleasures. That includes a fat doobie-doo and a big bag back in the room. I know you like a fat doobie-doo, you know I like a fat doobie-doo too. We're all alone, just the sun, the sand, the sea, and coconut trees. Do that doobie, you can doobie-doo me. I brought along a fat doobie-doo, a big bag back in the room. I know you like a fat doobie-doo, you know I like a fat doobie-doo too. We're all alone, just the sun, the sand, the sea, and they do me.
Fleet Tax Service has now opened a Mississauga location, and it is open for business. You know, over the summer months, Fleet Tax Service has opened a second location in Mississauga at 1115 Midway Boulevard in Mississauga, Ontario, to expand their services to the Toronto transportation market. After a successful opening celebration in October, the company is now fully focused on satisfied clients in the industry. The new location offers the same quality service as the Niagara location in Beamsville, Ontario. Your drivers now have multiple options for drug collection facilities and compliance services. Learn more about the new Mississauga location by visiting fleettaxservices.com. This has been another episode of the Lead Pedal Podcast. To learn more about the show and its host, visit theleadpedalpodcast.com.